The galaxy never forgets. It clings to its wounds like scars, etched into the fabric of space, each star a silent witness to bloodshed and betrayal. Here, among the halls of the Federation Combat Academy, echoes of the First War linger, not in whispers, but in the gazes exchanged, the names avoided, and the lessons written between the lines. Why do some wars never truly end? Are they bound to the memories of those who survived them, or to the grudges passed down to those who never fought? The Federation claims peace, unity, and progress, yet even here in its brightest institution, the divide between species remains palpable. The answer, perhaps, lies not in the politics of treaties, but in the hearts of those left behind, willing or not to carry their weight. The instructor, Commander Darius Holt, strode through the towering glass corridors of the academy, his boots tapping against polished floors as alien cadets parted to make way. Their faces, marked with unique evolutionary traits, mirrored curiosity, indifference, or thinly veiled disdain. Darius noticed it, as he always did, a human teaching combat in a galaxy where humans were tolerated, not respected. The cadet training chamber came into view, its reinforced walls humming faintly with energy. Inside, recruits from across the galaxy gathered, each a testament to their species' unique prowess. Yet, one figure stood out, a tall, slender alien, with deep, silver-hued skin and piercing amethyst eyes. Unlike the others, who jostled and postured, this cadet remained seated, their hands resting lightly on their knees, staring out the window into the void beyond. Darius hesitated, then entered. The session began with drills, routine exercises designed to test reflexes and strength. The silver-skinned cadet avoided participation entirely, drawing the ire of their peers. "Why are you even here?" a burly reptilian growled. The cadet said nothing, their eyes reflecting the starlight. Darius watched from the corner, his mind already turning. There was something deeper at play here, and he intended to find out what it was. The room buzzed with energy as cadets lunged and parried in precise formations, their movements a testament to their species' evolutionary strengths. The burly reptilian who had mocked the silver-skinned cadet now dominated his group's exercise, his heavy tail sweeping through the air as his claws struck targets with brutal efficiency. Commander Darius Holt observed quietly, arms crossed, his sharp eyes scanning the room. The silver-skinned cadet, still seated, became the center of whispers. Their stillness was a challenge to the room's rhythm. Some cadets scoffed, others murmured among themselves, their voices dripping with disdain. One cadet, a bird-like alien with feathers that shimmered under the training chamber's lights, gestured toward the outlier. Why does someone so unwilling to fight even bother showing up? Darius stepped forward, silencing the murmurs with a single look. "Every cadet here has a reason for being part of this program," he said firmly. His voice cut through the air like a blade, and it's my job to find out what that is. He approached the alien cadet, who finally raised their gaze to meet his. Those amethyst eyes held not defiance, but a quiet, almost haunting sorrow. "Name?" Darius asked, his tone neutral. "Keth Ra'al," the cadet replied softly, their voice melodic but laden with an unfamiliar weight. "Why aren't you participating, Keth?" For a moment, silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Keth said, "What would it change?" Darius froze. The words carried an edge of finality that caught him off guard. Before he could respond, an alarm blared through the chamber, bathing the room in red light. "Alert! Unauthorized vessel detected in orbit. All personnel report. To defensive stations," the automated voice droned. The cadets looked to Darius for direction. For Keth Ra'al, it was a chance to remain on the sidelines. For Darius, it was the first test of their resolve. "Move!" he barked. The time for questions had ended. Before we dive deeper into the chaos unfolding at the Academy, take a moment to show your support. If you're enjoying the story so far, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when our next galactic adventure unfolds. The battle is just beginning. Don't miss it. The corridors of the Academy erupted into chaos as cadets scrambled to follow the alarm's directive. Klaxons wailed overhead, and the rhythmic pounding of boots echoed off the metallic walls. Darius led the charge, his voice rising above the cacophony. Group leaders, form your squads, defensive positions at the docking bay. Now, the cadets moved with precision, their training taking hold despite the tension. Darius glanced back at Keth Ra'al, still lingering at the edge of the chamber. For a moment, he considered calling them out, but something in Keth's distant expression stopped him. This wasn't fear. It was something far more profound, like the weight of an unseen war pressing down on their shoulders. "Ra'al!" Darius barked, breaking the spell. "Are you waiting for an invitation?" Reluctantly, Keth moved to join the others, their posture rigid but deliberate. The squad filed into the docking bay, where the hum of defensive turrets signaled the Academy's automated response system coming online. Through the reinforced glass, a massive vessel loomed into view, its silhouette jagged and menacing. It bore no markings of allegiance, an anomaly in the heavily patrolled sectors of Federation space. "Identify," Darius ordered, stepping up to the control console. A holographic interface flared to life, displaying a scan of the vessel. The readings were scrambled, fragments of data flashing inconsistently. "Unknown vessel class," the system announced. "No registry detected. Weaponry extensive." Darius cursed under his breath. This wasn't a simple training interruption. It was a direct threat. He turned to the cadets, their faces a mixture of determination and unease. "Defensive lines! Hold your positions until further orders. Ra'al, stay here with me." Keth stiffened but complied, stepping closer as Darius began issuing commands to the Academy's automated defenses. The vessel outside shifted ominously, its hull bristling with movement. Then came the broadcast, a guttural, untranslatable voice that filled the air, its tone unmistakably hostile. The first shots fired against the Academy left no doubt. They were under siege. The first volley slammed into the Academy's shields, sending a resonant shudder through the station. The cadets braced themselves, gripping nearby railings, as the shockwaves rippled through the docking bay. Sparks rained from overhead conduits, and the automated defenses whirred to life, locking onto the hostile vessel. Darius worked the control console with practiced efficiency, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface. "Shields are holding," he muttered, scanning the readouts, "but that ship's packing enough firepower to punch through if we don't act fast." Behind him, Keth Ra'al watched in silence. Their amethyst eyes flicked between the display and the cadets taking position near the bay's defensive turrets. The tension in the room was palpable, each cadet standing shoulder to shoulder with members of species they barely tolerated. "Commander," one cadet, a feline-like alien with sleek jet-black fur, called out. "Return fire?" "Not yet," Darius said, his tone measured. "We need to know what we're dealing with first." Keth took a step closer, their voice soft but steady. "They're testing you." Darius glanced at them sharply. "Testing us how?" Keth gestured to the ship outside. "That initial barrage wasn't meant to destroy. It's probing the shields, gauging the Academy's defenses. They want to see how we react." The room fell silent. For the first time, the cadets looked at Keth not with scorn, but with a flicker of curiosity. "And how do you know this?" Darius asked, his voice low but pointed. Keth hesitated, their gaze falling to the floor. "Because it's what my people would do." Before Darius could press further, the hostile vessel opened fire again, this time with concentrated precision. The Academy's shields flickered, the energy grid struggling to compensate. "Turret teams, fire at will," Darius barked, breaking the silence. The docking bay erupted into motion as cadets manned the defense systems, unleashing volleys of plasma rounds toward the enemy ship. Amid the chaos, Keth remained rooted, their hands curling into fists. Their words from earlier hung in Darius's mind. There was more to this cadet than reluctance or pacifism. There was knowledge, and perhaps even a connection to the enemy outside. The docking bay roared with the sound of plasma turrets firing in synchronized bursts. Bright streaks of energy illuminated the darkness of space, slamming into the enemy vessel's hull. The impact sent debris scattering, but the ship remained operational, its menacing silhouette unwavering. "Direct hits," a cadet reported, their voice strained. "Minimal damage." Darius clenched his jaw. The Academy's defenses, designed for training scenarios and minor skirmishes, weren't equipped to handle a full-scale assault. He tapped into the console, redirecting auxiliary power to the shields. The energy levels were already dipping into critical ranges. "Ra'al," he said sharply, turning to Keth. "You seem to know something about their tactics. What's their next move?" Keth hesitated, the weight of a dozen gazes pressing on them. The other cadets, previously dismissive, now looked at Keth with a mix of expectation and doubt. "They'll disable the shields," Keth said finally, their voice steady despite the tension. "Then they'll board." "Board!" one cadet exclaimed, their scaled hands tightening around a turret's controls. "They'll bring the fight here?" Darius nodded grimly. "Makes sense. They can't destroy the station outright without risking its resources or its secrets." He glanced at Keth. "What are they after?" Keth's gaze drifted toward the enemy ship, their expression inscrutable. "I don't know. But if they're willing to risk this much, it's something important." Before Darius could press further, a warning blared from the console. "Shields at 20%, multiple breaches detected." A shockwave rocked the station as the enemy ship deployed grappling beams, latching onto the Academy's hull. The lights flickered, and an eerie silence fell over the bay as the turrets powered down. "They're coming," Darius said, his voice cold and commanding. "Cadets, prepare for close-quarters combat. Ra'al, stay with me." The docking. Bay doors hissed open, and shadows spilled into the chamber. Figures emerged, clad in sleek, battle-worn armor. They moved with precision, their weapons trained on the cadets. "Hold the line," Darius bellowed. The battle had reached their doorstep, and there was no turning back. The boarding party advanced with lethal precision, their armor gleaming. Under the harsh lights of the docking bay, they were unlike any enemy the cadets had trained for, tall, imposing figures with segmented exoskeletons that shimmered in dark hues. Their weapons, pulsating with alien energy, hissed as they leveled them at the defenders. Darius stepped forward, placing himself between the cadets and the intruders. "Hold your fire until I give the command," he barked, his voice steady. Despite the tension, the cadets tightened their grips on their weapons, their formations wavering slightly. Keth Ra'al stood at the edge of the line, their fists clenched. They didn't draw a weapon, nor did they step back. Their gaze was locked on the enemy, their expression unreadable. One of the intruders stepped forward, its weapon lowering slightly as it emitted a series of guttural, mechanical tones. The sound reverberated through the bay, unfamiliar and unsettling. "What are they saying?" a cadet whispered, panic creeping into their voice. Darius didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at Keth. "You understand them, don't you?" Keth hesitated, their shoulders stiffening. Slowly, they nodded. "They're demanding surrender. They claim we've taken something that belongs to them." "What are they talking about?" Darius pressed, his voice sharp. "I don't know," Keth replied, but their voice wavered, betraying uncertainty. The intruder stepped closer, raising its weapon again. Darius gritted his teeth. There was no time for negotiation. Cadets, defensive positions. Engage at will. The room erupted into chaos as plasma bolts lit the air. The cadets fired in controlled bursts, but the enemy moved with uncanny coordination, deflecting and evading the attacks. Their return, fire was brutal, and the cadets were forced to retreat behind cover. Keth remained exposed, frozen as if tethered to the spot. One of the intruders turned toward them, its weapon charging. "A real move!" Darius shouted, lunging toward them. He pulled Keth down just as the bolt sizzled past, narrowly missing them both. Pinned behind cover, Darius glared at Keth. "You'd better start talking, Raal. What aren't you telling me?" The docking bay descended into chaos, every corner consumed by the clash of plasma bolts and guttural roars. The cadets held their positions, their training barely keeping them alive against the relentless invaders. Smoke filled the air, thick and acrid, mingling with the sharp tang of scorched metal. Darius pressed Keith against the cover, his face inches from theirs. "Talk, now!" he demanded, his voice low but cutting through the cacophony. Keth's breath was shaky, their gaze darting between Darius and the advancing intruders. "They're called Vorin," they said, voice trembling. "Scavengers, conquerors, survivors of the First War." Darius felt his chest tighten. The First War, the scars it left behind, the buried grievances, all of it was coming back to haunt them. "What do they want with the Academy?" he asked, his tone sharper now. "They think you have something," Keth replied, glancing toward the main console at the center of the bay. "Something the Federation took from them years ago. A weapon or data. I don't know exactly." Darius frowned, his mind racing. The Federation had no shortage of secrets, but why had this been kept from him, from the cadets? His thoughts were interrupted by a deafening explosion. One of the defensive turrets overloaded, sending fragments scattering through the air. The intruders pushed forward, forcing the cadets to retreat further. Screams filled the room as one of the younger recruits fell, struck by a blast that left their armor smoking. Darius clenched his fists, his gaze snapping back to Keth. "You knew this was coming," he said, his voice cold. "Why didn't you warn us?" "I didn't know they'd come here," Keth snapped back, their amethyst eyes blazing. "But you wouldn't have listened to me anyway." Before Darius could respond, one of the intruders raised a device, its surface glowing ominously. The console at the bay's center began to hum, lights flickering wildly. "They're activating something," Keth whispered, their voice barely audible over the chaos. Darius turned to the cadets, his expression grim. "Fall back to the inner chambers. This isn't just an attack, it's a takeover. We're out of time." As the group scrambled to retreat, Keth lingered, their eyes locked on the console. "Commander, if they succeed, they'll destroy everything." Darius grabbed Keith's arm, pulling them toward the exit. "Not if we stop them first." The Academy's walls trembled as the enemy's device pulsed, casting harsh, flickering light across the control room. Darius positioned the cadets around the fortified chamber, his voice cutting through the tension. "Hold your positions. No one gets through." Keth stood at the main console, their fingers flying across the interface. "The device is rewriting the systems," they said, their tone urgent. "I can trigger a failsafe to stop it, but I'll need a few minutes." "You've got them," Darius said, turning to face the blast doors that groaned under the enemy's assault. "Cadets, prepare to engage." The doors gave way with a deafening crash, and the Vorin poured in, their sleek armored forms moving with deadly precision. Plasma fire lit the air as the cadets fought back, holding the line with everything they had. Darius led the charge, his rifle blazing, his commands sharp and clear. Keth worked frantically, bypassing layers of outdated security. Sweat beaded on their forehead as the console's alarms grew louder. "Just a little more," they whispered, their voice barely audible over the chaos. The Vorin pushed forward, their weapons cutting through the cadets' defenses. Darius fought to protect the line, his movements relentless. He spotted a cadet faltering and stepped in, deflecting an attack that could have been fatal. "Ral!" he shouted. "We're out of time!" Keth's hands slammed down on the final command, the failsafe activated with a blinding surge of energy, disrupting the enemy's device. The Vorin faltered, their movements disoriented. "Now!" Darius bellowed, rallying the cadets. In a coordinated push, they drove the intruders back. As the remaining Vorin retreated to their ship, Keth collapsed against the console, exhaustion etched into their features. Darius approached, placing a steady hand on their shoulder. "You did it." Keth looked up, their voice quiet but firm. "For now." The enemy vessel vanished into the void, but the unspoken truth lingered. This was only the beginning. The Academy may have survived the first wave, but the storm is far from over. If this story left you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more epic tales of survival, unity, and galactic intrigue. Together, we'll uncover what's next in this ever-expanding universe. Because, in the vast reaches of space, the real battle is only just beginning.